Okay, so we'll get into some of the science. So the way I like doing this, I find one of the problems I see in a lot of churches, we train people, not because it's, like this is the best way to do it. It's more just we have people that just sort of learn where the fader's supposed to go, and then they teach the next person that's where the fader's supposed to go, and then the next person learns that's where the fader's supposed to go. So I like to sort of do it as a building block. So we'll start with the science, so like what's happening in the real world, like what energy is involved and that type of thing, and then we'll move into sort of the bits and pieces and how they work, and then we'll get into sort of the signal flow. So when it goes from the microphone, comes out of the speaker, what's all the steps that's happening there, and then we'll get into some mixing stuff. So we'll start down at the bottom here, the foundation of the science. So sound is a vibration that moves through the air in the form of a wave. It's just basically really wiggly air, and that's what produces all the sounds we deal with. So understanding the science will allow you to understand what you can control and alter when you're mixing. So this here is a sine wave. That's the easiest way of depicting sound, but you generally don't actually run into real sine waves in the real world. It's a very complicated looking, I had a picture, but I lost it, of what a real waveform looks like, but it's all over the place because we're using all the frequencies. So with the wave, with our sine wave here, we've got amplitude, so that's how far up and down we're going. And then our wavelength is from peak to peak. So going up, down, and back up again. In this case, it would be from here to there. That's one wavelength. So our amplitude determines the volume. The higher that is, the more energy, so the louder it's going to be. It's measured in decibels. Anyone know why the B is capital, decibels? I know you know, I told you earlier today. Anyone? Any guesses? Bass? No. So it's a decibel, or decibel. It's a tenth of a bell. That's what the unit of measure we're using here. So a bell, as in reference to Alexander Graham Bell, because the original bell was used to measure signal loss over telephone wire. And that number was way too big for what we deal with, so they went with a tenth of it, a deci. It's metric. So sound travels in waves, and the amplitude is the height of those waves. You control the amplitude, the volume of the sound by boosting or cutting through your mixer. It takes about 2 dB of change-ish to sort of, for people to notice a difference. Oh yeah, I don't have music playing anymore. So what I was saying with that, so if I use my mixer here, if I turn this down, the volume goes down. We've decreased that amplitude, and then we bring it up. It's the same stuff with electrical. I know you're an electrician. You deal with, when you get into three-phase power, you have three waves that are offset of each other. We'll get into some phase stuff too. So we have amplitude. Frequency. It's the number of times the sound wave oscillates from peak to peak in 1 second. It's measured in hertz. So the range of human hearing is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That's sort of an average. As you get older, that sort of backs off, as seen by the, what's it called, mosquito noise. I could actually set one off here, actually, I think. I don't have it from here. Oh well. So younger people can hear much higher frequency. So if you play that higher frequency outside your store, it sort of shoos the teenagers away, while your older patrons don't even notice it. I've also seen it used in the opposite direction, where I know a few of the people in my high school used it as a ringtone, and then their teacher couldn't hear it. So, They're separated into sort of three groups is what we deal with. We have low, mid-range, high. You can, a lot of soundboards will do four. You have a low, mid, high. But that's about the range that might be different on different soundboards, but that's the idea. Like under 250 is those lower frequencies. When you go above that, you sort of get those mid-tones, and they start to get pretty high around 2K, and then from up here up, it's 6K up, it gets really like piercing. So, phase. If we have our sound wave, this is where I can probably draw something, but I'll show you here. So this references a point of the wave. Phase is important because combining sounds with phase differences can affect the volume and the feel of the sound. Phase problems are fixed by either switching, you can't switch the phase, but the polarity of a microphone, or by changing your microphone setup. So our picture here, we have our first sound. That's going to be your like 0 time. And the next one, what's actually happening is the next sound wave is happening later. So it's happening later in time, and so now they're out of phase. When you get to 180 degrees out of phase, you get cancellation. But before that, you get some boosting and cancellation. It's sort of a mix. And like I said, you generally won't see sine waves in the real world. It's more all over the place. So you get some stuff that'll boost and some stuff that'll cut. Let me pull this out. So we have our one sound wave doing this, and our second one doing that. When you add those together, you get nothing. And I actually have a practical example of this. Check. Oh. Can you throw the mixer up there? Two microphones. Oops. Check. Okay, two microphones. Both set. I'm going to bump the gain a little bit here. 35. Okay, check. Same microphone. So, if I talk into one, check 1, 2, check. Other one's the same. If I talk into both, check. It's louder. They added together. We had a boost. Check 1, 2, check. If we hit this polarity button on one of them, I'm trying to hit these at the same time. So check 1, 2, check. Get cancellation. Now you're still going to hear some stuff. Like I said, you don't get sine waves in the real world, so we have a bunch of different frequencies interacting. But there was, even on the meters, you get a noticeable drop. Check 1, 2, check. And so where that becomes important, check 1, 2, there we go. You can go back to the other one now. Where you'll, the most likely place you'll run into that is on a snare drum. Generally, you mic the top and the bottom of your snare drum because you want to get, let me draw again, even though I'm really bad at drawing. So we have our snare drum. Mic on top, mic on the bottom. Person hits the top of the snare drum, hopefully. I don't know, with some drummers, it's hits here. Sound waves are going to go up into that microphone, but they're also going to go down into that microphone. Do you see the problem? If you're thinking phase. Sound waves are moving in opposite directions. So they're going to be flipped. You can actually, if you want sometime, you can look it up. You can get some examples of a snare drum being out of phase. It just sounds sort of, you get that sort of sound. So, and that's just basically because you have mics pointing in opposite directions, so the sound's going to be sort of in opposite directions. And so you use that polarity button on your mixer to flip the bottom microphone so then they're more in phase. You also have a timing issue because the one mic's closer to where you're hitting and the other one is. So if you want to get really fancy, you can delay your whole kit to your slowest microphone. But I've seen that happen, and it didn't make it sound that much better. So it wasn't really worth the time. Any questions with amplitude, phase? Yeah, so other examples of phase. Choir mics. So I don't know if anyone here use choirs, mic them. There's a sort of a rule of thumb called a 3-to-1 rule. Your mics should be a 3-to-1 distance away. So for every foot out from your choir, they should be at least 3 feet apart if you're using multiple mics. And the reason for that is by the time the sound hits one mic, the other one's 3 times the distance away, the amplitude has dropped so much that it's not really affecting the other signal. But if they're like right next to each other, there's enough amplitude hitting the second mic that you have a time problem now, and you'll get some phase cancellation. Yeah, I guess that would also, I can't do it here because I only have one sub, but another place for it too, I know a really common way to set up like a portable system, especially if you have 2 subs, you can get those subs that the pole goes into it and the speaker goes on top. If you do that with left-right subs, you're going to run into this problem. So you get something called power alley. So the equidistant area from both subs is combining. You get a 3 dB boost just because you have the 2 of them adding together. But when you go a little off, you get a zone of cancellation in both sides because you're now 180 degrees out of phase and the amplitudes are high enough that they don't add together properly. So you get a ton of bass down the middle, no bass sort of on an angle, and then you get normal bass out the sides because you've hit that like 3-to-1 rule. The people are way closer to that subwoofer than that one. So by the time the sound hits, the amplitudes are too low and it's not really affecting it as much. That's in an open space when you aren't dealing with walls. Because even with this, actually you guys okay with sort of standing up and walking around? This is sort of an interesting thing. So with the sub, I'm going to play a low frequency sine wave. If you guys walk around the room, you'll actually hear spots where you're getting nodes and antinodes. So where the initial sound and a reflection are adding together and boosting the volume. And then you'll find other spots where the initial sound and a reflection are canceling out. And so you can actually walk around, you should be able to find a few spots where there's absolutely no bass. Oh yeah, so you have your 2 sound waves and they're going in and out of phase, and then this is how they would add together, is sort of what that graph is showing us here. So it's 6 dB when they add together. So 0 degrees will give you a 6 dB, 90 degrees you'll get about a 3 dB, they'll add together a little bit. 120, there's no effect, and that's why 3-phase power uses 120 degrees for their 3 phases. It'd be 0, 120, 360, or 240 for each phase, because they don't interact with each other as much. Right? I'm asking.
I told you no question.
Well, you're not asking. I'm asking a question. And then 180 degrees, like I said, it sort of cancels out.